Hello and welcome to another video in which I show you how to get really high grades. So we're going to start with a story opening. Here it is. Write the opening part of a story about a place that is severely affected by the weather. Well, this was submitted by a viewer. Let's introduce you, Haku Gota, who says, can you read it? Also, I think the marks are 3 or less than 3, grade 3. Well, it's obviously much better than that. I would put it around a grade 6. So what's useful for you is you're going to learn how to move from a grade 6 to get higher grades. And rather than just tell you, I'm going to show you. So pay attention because I'm going to edit it live and you'll see why I'm making the changes, because that's what I'll explain to you. So the wind roared, a beastly lion licking his mane. So this is a really powerful metaphor. The wind is a lion, we get the idea. But what I want to teach you here is that often less is more. So did I say licking? It's flicking his mane. If I just focus on the word mane, it's really obvious that when I read the word mane, it must be a lion. And it's semantically linked to the word roared. So I don't need the rest of the simile at all, sorry, the metaphor. And now, flicking his mane doesn't make sense on its own, so I've got the comma. Now that's a much quicker way to give that image to the reader. Whoosh, scree, it doesn't really mean anything, and the writer has put it in simply to get some onomatopoeia in. Now, that's not how you get the higher grades. To get the higher grades, every device that you put in, every technique, has got to have a purpose for the reader. Okay, it's got to make the story better, and this doesn't, so I'm simply going to get rid of it. The clear blue blanket of sky transformed into an ugly, never-ending abyss of black, the white pillows of clouds turning into a rancid silver. So this is a lovely image, and you've got this brilliant contrast between the blue blanket of the sky, which then is contrasted with the white pillows of clouds, semantically linked with the blanket, which turn to rancid silver. Okay, well, it's lovely writing and the vocabulary is great, but again, a lot of it is there just to tell the examiner, look, examiner, I'm describing, give me marks. And remember, that's not what you're getting marks for now. Yes, you have to describe, but the marks that you're getting now at the top end are for being appropriate. So let's look at the word clear. I can get rid of it, because if I see the sky as a blue blanket, the word blue already means it's clear. There's no clouds in that sky, or at least no stormy kind of weather, because blue suggests everything's visible. So we already know it's clear. Transformed into an ugly, never-ending abyss of black. Well, do we need to know it's a never-ending abyss? Well, I don't think we do. It's just there to show off vocabulary use. But actually, if I just have transformed into an ugly black, I've got that contrast. And now that contrast is repeated here. The white pillows of clouds turning into a rancid silver. Well, rancid is brilliant, but silver has connotations of things which are good, and that doesn't work so well with our description. So I'd simply change that to grey. Whoops, I could do better than that. Yep, so I've got this idea of something that was white has now been sullied by the weather. Now the problem I've got here, black is much darker than grey, and silver is much lighter than black. So actually I need a better word. And the problem, it turns out, is black. So I can get rid of it because the contrast I want is not with white, but with the blanket. So I could keep the idea of blackness, but call it a sheet. So it was a comforting blanket, now it's an ugly dark sheet, so it's been lessened, and then the dark will link with the grey. Okay, let's move to the next paragraph. Stacks of houses split into a million pieces, igniting with its rage like matchsticks. Really powerful metaphor here, which is personification. So the rage of the weather is igniting the houses like matchsticks. So we get a real sense of the destructive power of this storm, but splintered into a million pieces doesn't really give me an accurate picture of what's going on. That could be like a Tetris game, for example, So I need something that's going to create a picture of these pieces. So if I change it to split and splintered, I get the idea from splintered that it's lots of pieces. And what's even better now is I get the idea that these houses must have been made of wood, which is why they're so easy to destroy. Now, the problem now is I need to introduce the idea of the storm. The storm igniting with its rage. And the matchsticks here appear in the wrong part of my sentence. The storm igniting them like matchsticks with its rage. And now we can see that because they're wooden and splintered, these houses are now vulnerable to fire. And we get the idea of this whole village going up in fire. Sansa's, Old Man Rick's, each and every house in the village. I will just make it a little more clear that they're on fire, so I'll have the word alight. I don't necessarily need that, but I need the reader to know that matchsticks doesn't just go with small bits of wood. I also want to give them the idea of fire. I clutched my oval-like face, my eyes wincing and watering uncontrollably, my tiny frail fingers sprawling across my face like a spider. Why? Why did no one listen? So again, we've got a grade 6 writer who's introducing lots of lovely description. But the problem is, it doesn't suit the story. So you wouldn't take the time to think of your face as like an oval when you're watching a whole village being destroyed by fire. It's the kind of information that just wouldn't occur. So you could therefore just have, I clutched my face, my eyes wincing and watering. Well, it's nice alliteration with wincing and watering. We could have that. Uncontrollably, my tiny frail fingers sprawling across my face like a spider. So that's not bad, because we get the idea that this is a young child if they've got frail fingers. But if we want to get the idea that they're coming like a spider across your face, we might just put spidering across my face, and then we don't need the simile. Now you might say, oh, I've got to put similes in. You don't. They have to fit. Now, this works even better because it's as though these fingers are now disconnected from the narrator, and they're acting against, I'm going to call it him, against him, in an alien kind of way. They're now spiders rather than his own fingers. Now, if you've got this kind of question, it's a really good idea to have it as a separate paragraph. It also gives you something to return back to as a flashback. Presumably we could get some sort of warning given and a reason why this child, the narrator, was ignored. Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. I gulped down a cry. I never felt so powerless, so weak and so little. I wanted to scream, but the wind shrieked louder. Trees flattened into the earth and the tall dead grass tangoed in the destruction. The damp aroma of dead leaves and mud slowly yet surely commenced to advance over my frail body, paralysing me bit by bit, until not a part of my spirit and body could escape the clasp of the beast, my lungs howling for oxygen. So this is a really nicely written paragraph, easily getting you a grade 6. Unfortunately, again, it's got too much in it. That it's just there to say, pay attention, examiner, I'm describing. So let's see the stuff that we don't need. Well, hopefully you can see that this description, the damp aroma of dead leaves and mud advancing over my frail body, is just there to put the senses in. But it doesn't fit with this massive storm that's going on. So I'm going to get rid of it all. We've already had the idea as well that the body is frail from the previous paragraph, so we don't need to repeat it. Okay, so I've got rid of that, and I can just have that as a comma. Let me just make sure that's punctuated properly. Right. I had never felt so powerless, so weak and so little. So we don't need a semicolon there. It's not linking two sentences together. I wanted to scream, but the wind shrieked louder. Trees flattened into the earth and the tall dead grass tangoed in the destruction. Now, this is a really interesting idea of the grass almost celebrating. That's lovely, isn't it? We don't expect that. So it's enjoying this weather. That's great. But then dead doesn't quite work. So we need an alternative. Well, I can't think of a better word, that would fit. I could have called the grass spiteful, but that doesn't fit anything else in my description, really. So the easiest thing to do is just to get rid of it. Tall grass tangoed in the destruction, paralysing me bit by bit, until not a part of my spirit and body could escape the class of the beast. Well, the problem with this is it's not the grass that's paralysing you. It's the actual force of the wind. So we need to change the sentence around. So I'll show you that. Okay, so if I cut this bit about the wind, and then I'm going to paste it where it belongs, which is paralysing me bit by bit. So let's paste it here and you'll see how it works. Let me just tidy that up. Okay, so I've had to repunctuate it with full stops and commas in the right place. But we now know why you're being paralysed bit by bit. Next we've got a really short sentence for effect. I stumbled, my white milky fingers dispersing in the raven black sea of mud, begging God for forgiveness. Well, hopefully you're getting a feel now for how this writer is putting too much description in, and we can just get rid of quite a few bits here. So milky is already white, isn't it? And I like that description. So my milky fingers dispersing. Well, that sounds like they're coming off your hands and disappearing. And that's not what you mean. So, the obvious one would be clutching, because that's what fingers do. And that's an improvement, but it doesn't really link to milky. So what happens to milk when it goes wrong is it curdles. So it's a bit of a bizarre metaphor, but it works. My milky fingers curdling in the raven black sea of mud. That works. Why would your fingers be begging God for forgiveness? That doesn't really work, especially as earlier we found that people should have been listening to you and didn't. So we're going to get rid of that. Now, next, we've got another description which is there to say, look, I'm using the senses. And again, less is going to be more. My mouth tasted acidic, stale. Anxiety seized my chest and panic filled my mind, the duo ravaging the last traces of my hope. Okay, let's see how we can get rid of the stuff that we don't need. Well, raven black gives us darkness, but it also gives us the idea of a bird, which doesn't work here with the sea. So I'll get rid of sea of mud. My mouth tasted acidic, stale. Well, it's only going to be one or the other. And actually, is it necessary? Well, we'll keep it, because we had rancid earlier, which goes with acidic, so we'll keep acidic. Anxiety seized my chest and panic filled my mind. Okay, we can have that. I mean, if anxiety we know is in your mind, so we probably don't need that, but I'm going to leave it in because it does have an unpleasant rhythm to it. The duo ravaging the last traces of my hope. Well, we don't need to know that they're a duo. That makes them sound like dance partners. It's a bit too cheerful. Just as the thunder and wind ravaged across the landscape in an open blitz. Well, we don't want ravaging and ravage. That's not going to work. And actually, the word that stands out there for me is the word blitz, which would be quite interesting applied to the mind. So if I had anxiety seized my chest and panic blitzed my mind, that's much more fierce. And the examiner, who is after all just a reader, will never have read that before, I don't imagine, so I'm going to keep that. But we don't need that. We already know that it's destroying everything because we've had the village turned to matchsticks. So you're just telling the reader stuff they already know and they'll get impatient. So we'll just dump it. Okay, let's get to the next bit, and hopefully you'll get quite good at spotting where you need to get rid of stuff, because it's just there to describe. Trepidation of death climbed my body like a snake, twisting every limb, weakening me with each heartbeat. All I could do was beg and pray. Like always, I've had enough, but what could I do? Well, we don't need that you needed to pray, and we don't need this stuff about I'd had enough, but what could I do? We can infer all that from what you've already said. So I'm simply going to get rid of it. Cowering behind a cluster of boulders, I looked to my right, giving a cheerless smile to my brother Lance, who was 9 years my junior. Whenever you've got conversation, it's always a new paragraph. Hopefully you know that. Hold on, it will be fine. I grasped him with all the strength I could find, pulling his minuscule body to mine, my chin resting on his haystack of brown sun-kissed hair. This is slightly difficult for me here, because the haystack of brown sun-kissed hair doesn't really belong in this kind of description. However, I'm going to keep it because it does give you this contrast with the storm, and that you've just rescued your brother. Therefore, it's a positive moment, and obviously that positivity can be reflected in the choice of words in the description. And also, you've used this idea of sun-kissed, which contrasts with how you've described the weather. So that works semantically really well. But it now doesn't fully make sense because we've got no picture of where your brother is and how you need to grasp him. Presumably he's below you and you've got to pull him up. But that doesn't work with cowering behind a cluster of boulders, because then you'll be on the same level as him. So this now doesn't work as a story. And this is another problem you've got. Let's go back to the beginning. So the problem you've got at the beginning is that the examiner has asked you to write something about the weather, and you've naturally started to describe it. But description doesn't make a story, and you haven't thought about the action properly. So you've thought about what the storm is doing, splintering the houses, but you haven't thought about where the narrator and the brother are and how the brother is in danger. And that's the most important part of your story. And it's missing because you've concentrated on description rather than the plot. Okay, now I'm going to read you the end of this opening chapter. I felt his fear, his pain, understood his powerlessness. Rage seeped through the cracks of my heart. Why? Why were my pleas ignored? I warned them of the storm and now everything was lost. So this is a really powerful description. The senses are integrated here. So we're not feeling things by touch, we're feeling fear. The alliteration works. Yes, that should just be a comma, but never mind, we'll change that. And obviously this should be a comma as well, but we might have it as a fragment of a sentence for effect. Rage seeped through the cracks of my heart, a brilliant metaphor. Why? Why were my pleas ignored? Suddenly we're thrown into the middle of the action. We don't know what's going on. I warned them of the storm, and now everything was lost. Well, who is they? Okay, well, we could go back and answer those questions, but how much more powerful as a story would this be if this was actually the beginning of the story? Because now we have reasons to read on. We want to find out exactly who's involved, who is in pain, who are these other people with the power to ignore the narrator's pleas, and what were the pleas about? Suddenly we've got loads of reasons to read on. A shudder took hold of my body. The shunning eyes of the elders. Now this is fantastic. We've got some context here. We know this isn't a world exactly like ours because the older people in it are called elders, and these elders seem to be respected and in control, but they don't seem to be good rulers. They shun this young narrator. With the power I had left in me, I forced through my body, picking Lance up, running, stumbling, falling. Great rule of 3 there that gives you the sense of urgency. My head slammed a rock. The world spun around me. Dark, thundering clouds and landscape were merged into one. So now we know that there's a storm just from that little gentle, well, it's not gentle, but subtle description here. It will be fine, I said. I lied. How much more powerful is that as an opening? Because as a story, you've now gone in with plot and action. You can move from that to the earlier description. But that description now serves to answer the questions that you asked. The problem with placing the questions at the end, as you have, is they're much less powerful now. So I would actually favour putting this at the beginning to get higher marks. If you go back, you'll probably see some more description that you could probably get rid of and still keep the effect powerful, but I haven't done that all the way through. So this is now, if we'd started with this bit, we're now at least on a grade 7. We've got a gripping plot with lots of descriptive techniques in it, but they're not there just to show you can describe. They're there now to show the urgency of the narrator's fear, and also to give us clues about what's going to happen into the next chapter. Are these elders going to survive? Will he start some kind of new village somewhere else? Or is disaster about to come because you lied about everything being okay? Are there going to be even more natural disasters ahead? So well done for following what I've been trying to teach you here, that each technique you use must serve and fit your story. They must have a real reason for being there, not just to show that you are describing. So rather than explain that, hopefully I've shown it to you. Be ruthless with your own writing. Go back and get rid of the stuff that you don't need. And that's the best way to move from that grade 6 to higher grades. If you are new to my channel, welcome. Please consider subscribing because all my videos are there to help you improve your grades, and I do believe they work. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. And look out for my next video to help you get even better grades. Goodbye.